Okay, so the last assumption is called the diminishing marginal utility assumption. And this assumption basically said that the consumer value for a good diminishes as it has more of that good. In order to explain this one, we need a different example. So let's say this consumer, you in this case, let's say, is choosing between two goods, how many friends to have, or how many A's, grade of A's in courses to have. So that's a good choice between those two goods. And say, for instance, the consumer let's consider two different bundles. One in which the consumer has 4 A's and 1 friend, so that's one choice. And the second one in which the consumer has 1 friend, 1 A and 4 friends. Let's call that B. So the question I ask for you is, in which is the situation the consumer will be willing to give up more A's to obtain 1 more friend? In which of these situations is the consumer going to be willing to give up more A's for 1 friend? And what this assumption says is that this consumer is probably going to be willing to give up more A's for a friend when he has very little friends, let's say 1 friend, than when he has a lot of friends. So for instance, if we were going to draw an indifference curve, we will draw an indifference curve that basically look like that between these two goods. And that reflects that particular property. Notice that on this one, the consumer is willing to give up this much A's to consume 1 more friend, but below here, to consume 1 more friend, the consumer is willing to give up a lot less number of A's. So compare, in both of these cases, the consumer is gaining 1 more friend, but the consumer is actually willing to give up a lot more of the y-axis, of the A's, when the consumer didn't have a lot of friends, than when the consumer had a lot of friends. So what this diminishing utility assumption basically says is that the indifference curve have to be convex to the origin. They need to have the following slope. It's a negative slope that is always convex to the origin. So this indifference curve that I'm drawing here now are what economists call well-behaved indifference curve. And they're well-behaved because they meet the 4 basic assumptions we introduced. They are complete. They meet the transitivity assumption because they don't cross each other. They meet the more is better assumption because they have a negative slope and indifference curve to the right are better. And they also meet the diminishing marginal utility assumption because they are convex to the origin.